Hello everybody, I'm Dutch and I'm going to talk about something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm going to talk a lot about me and my roots in starting and DIY. And the reason you want to stay tuned is the YouTube users. We are going to give away a very special gift at the end, so you want to stay tuned and let's get into it. So, through Hike the Appalachian Trail 2003. I am a cheap person and I did not want to go and buy all new gear, especially a quilt. And that was just a little bit out of my budget. So I decided that I was going to learn how to make my own gear. And I knew a little bit about sewing, but I could learn a little bit more. And well, I didn't know the roads was going to get to this where I'm actually designing fabrics. But quilts were the very first thing that I started making them on my own, and it was so much fun. People nowadays get kits, but before quilts were even a thing, we were trying to figure them out, and we're trying to figure out how much down goes into, what size baffle goes in there. We used to have to cut the baffle material, and where to get the best materials. Materials were definitely hard to get back then. Matter of fact, my best resource was the Walmart dollar bin, and you were getting the scraps from, very often, a polyester suit lining was going to wind up being your quilt. So one of the very first things I made was this tarp back here, and I was so proud of it. I would take it to any family gathering, and I would be telling people that that had no interest in what I was talking about. Look at my tarp. Look at my seams. Look how straight my seams are. And it took me a long time to make that. Back then, there was really only one major tarp manufacturer. That was OES, Brian. And a lot of people didn't know it, but this kid was in high school and he was making all of our tarps. So we all used his design from OES long since he's been closed his doors. So I got into it more and I started making quilts, and I really enjoyed making quilts. I was there for, it felt like a revolution. There was people on hammock forums, and there was like 15–20% of the people there that really wanted to make their own gear. And that's what we talked about. And it was a huge part of it. Some people were talking about the gear that was made, but back then there wasn't all that many cottage vendors. So I really enjoyed, I would produce something, I would take pictures of it, I'd give a little tutorial on how I made it, and I would post on there, and I would look for the feedback from it. And I got a lot of pleasure by doing that people were amazed at what I was doing, and I was amazed that people were amazed at what I was doing. And some of the quilts I made, well, let's go back to an older one. So this is one of the first ones I made. This was when I got ultralight. The only quilt manufacturer back then was Jack Better. So this is kind of in their style, where it is omni tape. And you could use this as an underquilt, or you could use this as a top quilt. As you know, they have very versatile quilts. And basically it is a rectangle that you can draw the end and you can make a foot box. This was one of my first ones, and I was trying to get light with this. So it is full length. It's using, back then, what we thought was really ultralight, a 1.1 ounce per square yard fabric. And I'm using 900 fill down in here. And it is pretty good. But what you'll notice about this is it is not differentially baffled. And that's because this was actually before that became a thing. And then somebody went and said, oh yeah, well, I made my quilt differentially baffled. And I went on and I had to inquire, what does that mean? Well, that means that one side is bigger than the other side, so that when you pull it tight, particularly when you pull it tight around your body, you're gonna keep the loft. Because imagine if this is pulled tight, I am compressing that insulation. Whereas if I make the outside bigger than the inside, you are then going to make it so it has room to fluff. So an example of that would be, for every 5 inches on the inside, there's 6 inches on the baffles on the outside. And you go and you have to do that math, and so you know that how big the top quilt or the outer layer is going to be compared to the inner layer. And you do all that, and then you come up with something. Oh, this one, I went crazy with how thick this is. I thought I was going to be going hammock camping in the Arctic. And you can see that this is a differentially baffled quilt. If I pull this tight, it's tight on the inside, but it keeps all of its loft on the outside. And this has serious loft. I think this thing lofts to 4 or 5 inches. There was a time when people all had 3/4 underquilts, and this is a 3/4 underquilt. I used, as an experiment, I used sil nylon on the inside because I wanted the extra wind blockage. Everyone said that it was going to be bad because I would get sweat and it wouldn't evaporate. I never found that to be a problem, but maybe some people put off more moisture than others. But this was the very first time that I went and I did a draft collar on it. So it was kind of exciting for me. I went a little bit further, and this is, I wanted to get lighter, so I used a lighter fabric, and then I used 0.33 Dyneema on the inside. I've never seen anybody else do this. 900 fill down, and this again is a 3/4, but you can see this thing is seriously, has some serious loft on it, and I can't imagine that I'll ever go out on anything that this wouldn't be able to handle. So I think this is Momentum on the outside. Momentum was the best fabric that you could get at the time. It was from a through hiker, and it was really great stuff. It was highly coveted. So I was really experimenting, and I wanted to make something that was really versatile, and I wanted to make a backpack that turned into a hammock. And I tried all kinds of things with, but it's a lot of fabric in a hammock. And that gathered end made it difficult, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna ungather it, and you really couldn't do it. Well, just then, there was a revolution, and that was bridge hammocks. And it hit me like a bolt of lightning that if I could go and make a bridge hammock, I could make it into a backpack. And that's the pack that I'm wearing right now. So this almost made me famous in my day. And this is the bridge skin backpack. And there was a backpack that was called a gear skin, and it was a simple way of making a backpack. And then bridges were just starting out. And I'm thinking back to Professor Hammock. There's Grizz and there's TD, and a whole bunch of us, we were playing around with the dimensions that you used, and the size poles, what we used for the suspension triangle, putting the webbing through the hem, and it was new and it was exciting. And then I produced this pack, and the way it works is it's all going to fold up into this, and it sandwiches everything. So if I unclick these on the side, and you have to keep everything into a stuff sack. I gotta warn you, this is gonna make you want one, and you're going to want me to make you one, but I found them to be kind of unpractical because the hours it takes to make this was just not worth it. And I would put like 40 hours of sewing into this. And then I also found it to kind of be unpractical because when you wanted to pack up, you had to take your hammock, lay it out on the ground, and put all your little stuff sacks in there. And it's so much easier just to have a bag and you throw everything in. But you can see that I keep all my gear in stuff sacks. I keep a pad in here. This really was my frame of my pack, but it also would be the insulation that I use when it becomes the hammock. And after it's all undone like this, you unroll the sides. And when you unroll all the sides, it winds up being this shape. So, here you can see my backpack suspension. These tabs are where it all rolls up on. The pad would just lay in there. On this side, this was actually the back of the backpack, and this actually had a removable pocket that could also flip over, and you kept your tarp in there, which of course would be wet, so you wanted to keep something on the outside. On the first version, I did it with a mesh pocket. So this thing, actually, I consider this thing my start, because after I made this, this is when people started saying, can I buy gear off you? And I was saying no, because I spent so much time and so much love putting into this thing. The one thing I do not want to do is put it into a box and send it off to somebody who might have dirty hands and not take care of it, and that kind of thing. But on the end of my suspension, I had made this aluminum clip. And this aluminum clip turned out to be the first piece of gear that I commercially made, and that is the Dutch clip. So that is how I got my start, because we started going and making these things for charity. And that's what snowballed into Dutchware. So, and I wasn't even going to release that, but somebody insisted that I do, or they were going to release it, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to let that happen. So we actually did it for charity. Since that day, there have been great cottage vendors that have come out. A lot of them came up the same way I did, making my own gear and perfecting the craft, putting a lot of love into things. I'm thinking, think of the way Trailheads really cuts down the weight, really puts a lot of love into making it so that gear is as light as it possibly can be, and you're getting down to the finest. His ethereal quilts and things like that are as low as you possibly can get. So from there, I wanted you to know how great it is to be a DIYer and be able to then be someone that designs the fabrics. The fabrics that I used for my quilts. I really got into what makes a fabric, what makes them well, light, and I was able to, for the very first item, was argan, and that's because I was really into quilts at the time. So I made my first quilt fabric, and it just so happens I really hit it good, and there wasn't too much in the market at the time. So a 15 denier, or actually 67 is a 10 denier fabric, and then I soon came out with the 15 denier, which was argan 90. And these fabrics, not only were they fantastic, but also we were able to supply the market. And the market was able to get a consistent fabric every time, because you never know what was going to be in the Walmart bin every time you go for it. So, a quilt company could order these fabrics, and I would have them in stock continuously. I really geek out on the fabrics, and I have designed a whole array of fabrics. That for the quilt line, we got the argans, which is the 67, the 90, and we go all the way down to 7 denier, which is argan 49. That is a more recent release. We have a 20 denier, and that is ion, which is also a really good fabric for being very downproof and windproof. We have pack materials. 300D was the very first pack material that I made, and since then we've been able to expand it. We buy commercially ones, like we have Dyneema. We're a distributor of Dyneema, and all the exciting things that you can do with Dyneema. Making stuff sacks, make them so they're almost weightless, make it out of Dyneema. And if you think that you're not a DIYer, make Dyneema stuff. It's really using tape most of the time, and it's really easy to do. So X-Pack, so there are applications where X-Pack is absolutely brilliant with the polyester on the outside and this laminate with that real serious ripstop grid. The waterproof fabrics, we got Sil Nylon, we got Xenon, and we got even Xenon 0.9. So with this, we were even able to bond these together so you don't have to sew these together. And that makes for a waterproof seal right above your head. And we've had tremendous success with it. Imagine a DIYer having those type of sorry, I can't think of the word, but resources, those type of resources. You know, I had the privilege of meeting Jake Law, who is the owner of DAC, which is the Doing Aluminum Corporation. And now I am a DAC distributor, and DAC poles are absolutely amazing. The way he does his anodizing is absolutely amazing. And he makes like a different pole for every different application. So these have a certain amount of flex, they have a certain amount of weight, and it is all dedicated to exactly, this tent has to be windproof. So it's going to have a very strong and be able to flex and come back. Or this one has a strong bend on it. So it'll have that bend and then spring back to straight every time. The strength of the larger poles for doing things like this. These are Easton poles here, but I'm really telling you, the pinnacle, when you get down to DAC poles, they are amazing. The anodizing is actually eco-friendly, and he reuses the liquids that you have to put this in. It's chemicals that this process is done in, and he's developed a way so that is recycled, which saves him money. But if you ever had a DAC pole, what you didn't have is a DAC pole with a scratch in it, because the stuff is amazing and it doesn't scratch. Then there's the hardware. To be able to develop hardware, of course, you know the metal hardware and all that's been on with that. The Dutch clip, which was the first one, and then it continued on to be amazing things like the wasp and things, and that has been so much fun. To develop that and make it into bugs just gives a flair of creativity. But if you're really into the DIY and you get the plastic hardware, I mean, we are one of the biggest online resources for plastic hardware. There are stuff here that I'm like, okay, I'll stock it, but I don't know what they're going to use it for. But people do find a use for it. And maybe you're not making a bridge skin backpack, but everybody uses these, and very often these things break or you need to replace these. And I like to keep in my emergency kit cord locks, some shock cord, some string. So even if you're not a DIYer, you still want to have those resources available to you. Mitten hooks. When I go bike packing, I also keep a little repair kit. And if you have a mitten hook and a shock cord, then you have a great way of strapping things to your rack and things like that. So there are DIYers of all level. We've even been able to develop some of our own plastic hardware that is proprietary, that improved on what was out there. Everybody has these pack hooks, but we actually made a mold, and we made it so that this fits 3/32 shock cord. Everybody else's shock cord is meant for 1/8. So 3/32 tends to slip out of it. So if you look on the side of a Chameleon, you're able to use a shock cord that's going to go down to the 3/32. Same thing with line locks. We make something called a line lock V, and the line lock V is going to go down to 1 millimeter cord, which most line locks, they slip with with 1mm cord, and they're really meant for 2mm cord. So that also is something that really excites me, because I'm able to develop the plastic hardware, the metal hardware, the fabric for the DIYers. This hobby is just rife with being able to tinker. Maybe you can't sew, but you can probably splice. So there's all the things that have to be spliced onto a suspension. You can swap things out. You can swap out your suspension. Suspension is so much fun, or your continuous loop. And actually, the way that has changed over the years has been amazing. From people, first we used to wrap 4 times around it and then tie a little knot. There was Hennessy that had some incredible knot that he put on there. And then we started using descending rings. Actually, when I was going through my DIY bin, I went and I found descending rings that were used, which were like, the motorcycle helmet rings. And that was all very common. The whoopee sling at one point was a revelation. Now it's old news, and people are moving away from it and going to all webbing suspensions. Some of the other components that are out there today, we are really fortunate to have the webbings we have. Webbings have gotten down to 1.5 ounces per square foot, which is like a fifth of the weight of what was just 10 years ago. Baffle material. So in a quilt, you have to sew these baffles unless it's sewn through. And not too long ago, you had to go and buy the bug net, and then you had to draw lines on it and cut those lines to make this, which now we have roll slitters, and we can cut 1.5 and 2.5, and all you have to do is know how many feet. Really, if you're getting into the DIY, get excited in the build of it. That it's not, I don't really enjoy making from a kit. I really get enjoying where I sketch it all out, how I'm going to do it. I do the math, make the purchases, and then I put it together. I prototype it. It is, it's really part of the fun. You really don't save that much money, because you're going to wind up spending a lot of money on fabrics that, well, unfortunately, it doesn't save you all that much money. Today's cottage industries are producing incredible gear, I think, at incredible prices. But there really is the thrill of that. There's also some other advantages. You are making this gear, so when this gear fails, you know how to repair it. And you can also make something that's really personal to you, to your size. You don't have to buy something that's going to be baggy in your fleece jacket. You can make it just perfect. You can make the things that you want, just the colors you want. With the dye sublimation that we have today, you can order 2 yards of dye sublimated fabric and make your backpack really unique to you, which, it's really special. So, we're going to open it up to some questions. So, I'll give it a couple minutes and I'll chatter some more, but please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. And Alex is on the ready. He's going to send them to me. So I did want to go through the magnetic plastic hardware of today, because there are some amazing things on that. These things line up and they hold themselves very often with a magnet, but they'll release mechanically. Here's an example of that. And I love this buckle. This is a magic buckle, and you can do this with one hand. You push that. Did you see that opened up? Because the magnets are offset, and then this quickly can come apart. But when I want to put it together, it lines itself up, and you can easily one-handed connect this. This one is a twist buckle. This thing does not come apart, but if you twist it just the way, the magnets release, and you're able to let it loose. There's another magic buckle. This is a center push, and You see how, because that magnet's there, it's going to line it up for you. So, all right, well, let's go to our big giveaway. So this giveaway is going to be for YouTube. And if you're on YouTube right now and you want to win, and I'm putting up something very special, something I put a lot of love into, is this quilt. So this quilt is probably a 0 degree. I don't really know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure this will get you down to 0. It's got Dyneema on the inside, 0.33, and it is extremely light. And it's kind of old school with the 3/4. So what you do is this goes down to about my ankles, and you have a foot pad, and you put a foot pad underneath the underneath your feet to keep your feet warm, and it's going to be pretty much about as light as you can get for this coverage. So in order to win that, all you have to do is name on Facebook the very first metal piece on YouTube. I apologize. So this is for you YouTube users. You just have to name the very first piece of metal hardware that I invented. And first person that does that gets the quilt. So somebody let me know when that happens. And I can do, here's a question. Where'd you learn how to do such complex projects? Well, it starts simple, and it really starts when I was hunting. I would make an armband that held my iPod or something like that, and you don't go right into a bridge skin the very first time. You build on one piece after another, and it really is. Designing it is really the fun of it. If you bought a kit and you put it together, my opinion is you might as well just buy the finished good, because you really didn't get to put your ideas and your thought and your love into it. And sometimes you go down a road and you think something's going to work, but very often things work much better in my head than they do in reality. So you go and you do all this and it totally fails. I can tell you about all the right angle hammocks that just tore apart when I laid in them. So, all right, have we got the winner for the, okay, so Alex, why don't you give me the winner, unless you've already given that to me. And the winner of this quilt, man, I still hate to part with it, is Jim Anderson. So congratulations to Jim Anderson. And, well, either message us or send us an email, and we'll get this right out to you. And congratulations. In closing, you know, the DIY, it can be tiny. You can be DIY in your meals, you can be DIY in your suspension, or you could be going all in. But it really is fulfilling. And the resources that we have today they're exceptional. The fabrics are amazing, and the hardware is amazing when you can get baffle material and you don't have to cut apart bug net to do it. And don't be afraid to give it a shot, because I really think that, you know, we are really what we've learned. And by doing this, you learn more. And when you can do more things, well, then you can do more things. So give it a shot and see what you can come up with. Until then, thank you, everybody.